Hi, I'm Dave Levy, and I'm drawn to the Beatles. Had to do McCartney 2 as the second video in this series, just because the first one was the McCartney album, his self-titled debut in 1970, and 10 years later he followed it with this record that I'm going to draw today, which is McCartney 2. And we just got word that on December 11th, 2020, we're going to be getting McCartney 3. So McCartney 2 is now part of a trilogy of self-titled McCartney albums that span the decades. And what's really neat about these records is a lot of people are already noting this on different fan pages and such, that, okay, there's some criteria to them. Who knows how much any of that matters to Paul, but it seems to be he's playing all the instruments, he's producing it, he's engineering it, and there's no filter he's going through, right? He's not going through another producer. There's no one in the band besides him really that is contributing music or performances that are kind of lending anything of their own into his music. So it's this unfiltered Paul that seems to be what it's about, although obviously Linda supplied backing vocals on McCartney and McCartney 2. And one thing I just have to do, some drawing, is just get this rant out of the way because it's so irritating to me. And it's this idea that Paul's work is all subdivided and all these divisions are really like some fans just hold them to such a distinct, they just draw these lines in his career. So like on that front, McCartney 2 is considered by some to be his second solo album. But if you hear that, to me that's, oh, you mean Ram in 1971, because solo is post-Beatles. That's what that means to me, and I think that's the most important definition there is, because yes, there was Wings, and different members of Wings came in and out, and throughout the 70s, John Lennon played with different musicians, calling himself Plastic Ono Band, Elephant's Memory Band. There was all kinds of names, even in his short career. It doesn't matter. That's all John Lennon solo. This is all Paul McCartney solo. Clearly, Paul was running the show on every Wings album. Yes, there's a band there. I'm sure they came up with things. They wrote some songs. They had input, and they were part of that thing. But ultimately, that's a Paul McCartney vehicle. That's a Paul project. He's the CEO and president and chief operating officer of that band, right? Like the buck stops with him. He's not going to put anything on it that he doesn't think belongs there. He's not going to compromise on the singles he wants to release. I mean, it's his band. And so there's post-Beatles starts in 1970, and that's what all of this is. So, this isn't the second Paul McCartney solo album. This is the album after Back to the Egg. Paul's work is a body of work that has continuity and doesn't have all these subdivisions that mean anything ultimately. I mean, you can put a lasso around them and say, okay, and the Wings period is 71 to 79. That's fine. I enjoy thinking of it that way too, but I certainly I'm not going to try to convince anybody that McCartney 2 is the second Paul McCartney album. That's just getting ridiculous by that point. So with that out of the way, what's really cool about this record that's, to me, sets it apart maybe from the rest of Paul's career and any solo Beatles release is that it's this accidental album. Like, this wasn't Paul trying to make his next album, and he probably wouldn't have gone about it the way he did if he was. It was really, he had just put out Back to the Egg, the final, what turned out to be the final Wings album. It didn't do incredibly well, did fine by other standards, but not, Wings had a certain level of success with most of their work by that point, and it didn't, meet that grade. So Paul was already, he put it out, and he was kind of just decided to try some home recordings because he was itching to do something that wasn't that, because that was like a big album. It was really probably in his mind going to be a band on the run or something that would resonate, with a new audience. And it didn't quite do that, although, of course, a lot of us love it. But he kind of just did a total left turn, got some recording equipment, played drums in his bathroom on the toilet, shook a maraca like an infant, for 10 minutes to do overdubs. And he amassed like about 20 songs or so. So and even then it was kind of like, okay, I got all these tracks, and he started playing them for people. That's how the story goes. And then the assumption everyone made when they heard them was, oh, your next album. And I think, part of what happened next might have pushed that idea further, because Paul gets busted for drugs in Japan in January 1980, does some jail time, doesn't know what's going to happen. It becomes the thing that, stops that Wings tour from going further. And the plan with Wings, as a functioning working band, is probably really not, the top of Paul's mind at that point. And he's got this interesting set of recordings that he's now lived with for, I guess, 6 months. The only one that would have been heard by that point would have been Wonderful Christmas Time, which was a single. So when these recordings finally go out into the world as McCartney 2 in May 1980, it was met with a lot of negative reviews from the critics and a lot of confusion from the fans. And I probably would have been one of them, if I was old enough to buy it at the time and experience it. I might have been very put off by it. But as someone who was coming to it, as a second generation fan, when the album became available on compact disc, it was still odd. I'm not going to say it wasn't, in 1980, 89 or 88 when I heard it, but it was accessible in a way, again, that idea of, okay, I know this man's full body of work to that date, and I can put this into some kind of perspective, that knowing, it's followed by Tug of War and it's preceded by Back to the Yeg, and you can kind of see where it fits, in terms of Paul's evolution. But the thing that's really special about it is how its reputation has changed. And I know that's happened, with Wildlife 2, another, slammed McCartney album. But with McCartney 2, it's not that everyone has come on board and just puts it as their number one, McCartney album, but it's got respect. It's got cult status. It really has earned this interesting place, in his catalog. And it's just an odd, fun, artsy, experimental album. It's got Coming Up, which the live version with Wings became a number one hit in America. Temporary Secretary is completely off the wall. Still an insane song, a relentless song, but I just find it delightful. I just love it to pieces. On the Way, love the blues feeling of it. It's one of the more analog kind of non-synth songs on the record. You get a variety. I know this is considered more of a synth pop record, but then there's all kinds of styles on here that's got much more variety than I think the average person thinks about. Waterfalls, a beautiful ballad that my 4-year-old requests on a daily basis at this point, as one of her favorite songs to hear in the car. It's really beautiful. It's haunting. It's almost like a lullaby. I could see why she likes it, but it's got that like melancholy to it. It's the kind of thing that would have probably been maybe a little overpolished if it had been saved for Tug of War. It's a little quirkier. It's definitely like a classic McCartney ballad, but it falls into more of an indie sound, and I think that's a great thing. Nobody Knows is just one of the funnest songs on this record. Just really like kind of a beautiful, not rockabilly sound, but just a fun, hit in the kitchen pots and pans kind of song. Like really just a playful lyric and the kind of thing like that McCartney is so great at just kind of tossing off. So Bogey Music and Darkroom, I don't dislike them, but they also don't, go rise above, the idea of Paul just kind of jamming on his own in his pajamas. Like they just don't for me, they don't grow beyond that. One of These Days, is the album closer, and it's just fantastic. And again, it's this haunting ballad. It would have been much more produced, again, if it had been on Tug of War. So love McCartney 2. Thanks for watching. I really had fun drawing this simple album cover, which took me way too long to draw for some reason. But I hope you had fun, and I hope you want to come back for more. I'll see you soon.